So I've started the recording now. So welcome to ZEST webinar number 4 in the book study series. And that's what I'll go through the agenda. And basically what we do is I have a lot of slides and a lot of exercises ready. We go as far as we're going to go. It may take us a year to get through all the exercises. It may not. Some are long, some are short. So we just play it by ear. We have whatever discussion we want to have. We keep it pretty loose and flexible. So the agenda, there we go. We're going to be finishing off part 1 of the book, which is Awaken the Woman Within. Chapter 2, exercise 8 was the only thing we had left to do in that. And as I mentioned, I'm recording these and I am posting them on my website, lindababuluk.com. If you go under programs, you'll see my ZEST Wisdom Circle, my Live Your ZEST, and all of that. But at the very bottom says Zest Your Life Book Study. And that's where you'll find the webinars. And there, click that. It's at the very bottom of the page. You'll see webinar 1, 2, 3, and they're all in order in there. And they're also on my YouTube channel. So this is what we are prepared to do, but I'm sure we're not going to get that far tonight. We will do the best that we can, but we don't need to rush this. Otherwise, that would defeat the entire purpose. So last week, we ended on this affirmation. I paid attention to what is said and how it is said. And that's a conversation I just had this afternoon with my speaking coach about a speech that I'm going to be given. And that's about the importance of words. And that's part of what the whole ZEST book is about. So we start tonight on the inconsistent message, which is on page 62 of the book, chapter 3. And if you have the manual with you, it's probably around page 22 if you printed off the manual. Now this is an old thing that's been around for a long time, and most people don't give credit to where it came from, but it did come from a professor who's now retired. He was at UCLA, and what he was looking at was the connections of what happens when you're speaking face to face to persuade a listener. Now, a lot of this has gone out the door with so much social media, but on the other hand, when we're doing videos, some of it may still apply. Now, he hasn't redone the study. This goes back quite a ways. I don't have the date with me now. But just jot down what you think are the percentages of influence for each of these. So which of these elements carries the most believability is what he measured when you're speaking face to face.
Probably 10, 20, 70.
Nat?
And I would put a little bit more on the middle one, but 10 is probably right for the first one. I'd probably break it down more to kind of up to 30% in the center.
Here are the answers. So your verbal is only 7%, which isn't far off 10. Your vocal, which is the tone of your voice and how you speak, because some people have very high-pitched voice. I know that working with my speaking coach, I've been able to bring my voice down in other exercises that I do, because that high pitch can really be annoying. But it's really your visual and your facial expressions that make all the difference. And that's when we start speaking, and we can affect our believability and our trustability when we do things and we're nervous and we don't even realize that we're expressing that. So it could be you're under pressure, we could be rolling our eyes. We've all seen that. Or the breathing gets affected a little differently and you're wondering what you said or what you did that maybe wasn't taken the way you meant it to be. Or I saw somebody doing a Facebook Live the other day and she said, I'm so excited to be here today to work with you. It was like, you don't seem very excited. So we need that. That's the consistency is what makes all the difference. And quite a bit of this book, although I didn't really mention this when I wrote the book, quite a bit of these pieces were in my corporate training program. And I'm finding now I've got a new client that I'm using a lot of my corporate training with. So it's sort of funny to go back all those years and pull it back out again. So that's exercise number 8. And we want to, be conscious of our own way of speaking. If we look down, if we look up, however we're doing it. I would tell a story about how my husband used to, when he had hair, he used to scratch his head like this, right on the part, because he didn't have much hair, so he didn't want it to get messed up. So he would just scratch on the part whenever he had to speak. And I said to him, "Are you nervous?" And he said, "No, I'm fine." I said, "Well, you look nervous when you do that." And then he had his head shaved, and he did it again. I said, "You know that little thing I told you about? You always rub your head right in the part of your hair. You have no hair, you're still doing it. And it makes you look nervous." So it's those little mannerisms that we may have that we don't even notice that we have. Now, I haven't noticed any in either one of you, so I can't point any of those out. I've been told that sometimes I roll my eyes.
Nah.
I'm pretty obvious. I mean, it usually comes out of my mouth. You know what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
At the end of each of the parts in the books, we had zesters. And that's when you choose your zesters that you're going to implement by completing the sentence, "I awaken my zest by taking action and doing the following." So let me just flip to a few of the zesters that I had listed in here. There's a long list. We talked about power-filled stories, and it's good to remind ourselves of those times when we did feel powerful. There must have been some time in the last 3 weeks where you felt really powerful, and write them down. And keep track of them, because often we remind ourselves of the things that we didn't go so well for us, but we need to celebrate our victories and what we've done well. We need to speak kindly to ourselves. Doing so, it changes the molecules in your brain, because I know some women say things to themselves that they would never, ever say to another person. So we need to be much kinder to ourselves. Give ourselves praise and recognition for what we accomplished in that day. We accomplished a lot in one day. My day started this morning at 6 a.m. And then it was meeting after meeting, exercising, and getting it all in. Practice being aware of and in control of your own power. So the very first part, that awaken the woman within, was really talked a lot more than I realized about power and grabbing those power moments. And if you need to, find a hero and walk in her steps until you can walk on your own. Another zester, to spend time in nature, which is easier to do where you are than right now. It's pouring rain and we're just above the freezing mark. So the snow is melting, but it's still not nice. And it's going to come back. Like, it'll get real cold again, and then we'll have more snow. And yeah. On Sunday, the whole family, John and the kids, all went skiing. But it was, it's sort of fake spring, and that happens to us a few times. The other important thing that's really important being on these webinars is to just be in this moment. And as a yoga instructor, you certainly know that, is to just feel and breathe, and at that moment, set an intent to celebrate your success. We talked about listening past what people say and what they mean, what emotion is attached to that. And to listen to ourselves and feel what emotions are attached to our thoughts. Asking questions is good. Practicing heart-to-heart communication with yourself and others. And if you wake up in the middle of the night, like sometimes I do, I figure there's a message. Somebody's woken me up somewhere in the universe, and I want to say, okay, what do you want? You woke me up. talk to me. And if you're not going to talk to me, let me go back to sleep.
Mhm.
And sometimes I get some great insights. I got to remember that in the morning. And then the last zesters are be grateful that you love yourself enough to be here today, and smile and get some sleep. Sleep is very important. And it changes for everyone how much sleep they need. How are you doing on your sleep lately, Nat?
Oh, about 6 hours, 6 to 8.
Oh, that's
So
good.
it's not bad, not bad. But lots of times I wake up at 4. So
Yeah.
mhm.
And then do you get up or do you go back to sleep?
Oh no, I get up.
Okay.
Yeah, well, it's early. Houston's an early city.
Yes, it is.
Mhm. Yeah.
So
Go
from
ahead.
that, do you have any zesters that you be able to apply?
The only one that just keeps coming to my mind is engaging with positive people. I mean, that's it's all about the interaction. I know that's not necessarily along the line that you're talking about, but it kind of enables me, if you will, the interface and the feeding off the energy of different people, and
Mm-hmm.
I find that zesty, if you will.
Yes, because we know what happens if we have the opposite of that, don't we?
Right.
If we don't have the positive people in our life, or people that are complaining about us or passing judgment on us or telling us how to behave or how to lead our lives. I remember it was code word when I was studying shamanics. They would say, can I give you a reflection? It was just code for, I want to give you hell about something. And then I just remember it took me a while to catch on, and then I did catch on. And I went, no, I'm good, thanks. I don't need your reflection. So it's really interesting on how much effect other people's energies have on us. Pat, are you with us? Looks like Pat's just joined us. She may be on mute. Okay. So this is one of Jacqueline's favorite quotes.
I love that quote.
Well, who's going to read it out? Pat, we can barely hear you.
Okay, I can read it out. Can you hear me?
Awesome.
Okay, live your life in such a way that when your feet hit the floor in the morning, Satan shudders and says, oh shit, she's awake.
Welcome to the call. That's a great way to start it, Pat.
Thank you, Linda.
It's nice to have you here. Pat's in Montreal. Or are you in Montreal tonight?
Yeah, not in Montreal.
Great. So now we move on to part 2 of the book, which is create emotional maturity. And the first exercise in this is what goes where. This is adapted from Stephen Covey's 7 Habits. And certainly one way to increase your zest and to increase your power is to know about the circle of concern and the circle of influence. So if we start on the outside with the circle of concern, those are the things that we worry or we're concerned of, but over which we probably have little control. So in there, we would put war, a certain amount of poverty, the environment, terrorists. It could be the outcome of the Olympics, the weather. Those are all things we may be concerned about, but we don't have any influence over, or very little influence. And in the circle of influence is within that circle of concern. So there are other things that we're concerned about that we do have influence over. It could be our family, it could be our spouse, our children, our parents, our partners, our neighborhood. And what you were saying, Nat, just who we surround ourselves with in our world, who our friends are. That's our circle of influence, how we are emotionally, physically, mentally, and spiritually, those are all items that are within our circle of influence. So you have direct control over that. So that could be your health. Problems at work, you could have influence over. Now, the importance of this is to know where to put your energy. Because the biggest problem is when something is in our circle of concern, but not in our circle of influence. It's in that dark orange section. So we're really concerned about it, like our adult children or a friend who's going through something, but we have absolutely no influence over making a difference and trying to change that. When a person passes away and you're concerned for their family, and you can bring something over to say my condolences, but you're really, and that's a certain amount of influence, but for the most part, we don't have influence. So we may have a very large circle of concern, but we don't have a circle of influence, will always be smaller. But we don't want to underestimate our circle of influence either, because if you ever heard a kid crying in the mall, you know they have a big circle of influence because everybody's looking around to see, why is their child crying? So this is a really important basic piece that introduces us into this emotional maturity. If we can discern those two things, that makes a really big difference on how much energy we're left with. Because if we put our nose into a circle of concern that's none of our influence, people don't want you there. And they're going to reject you there. I remember when our son was getting married and my husband said, well, you should help them. Like, they're doing their own wedding invitation. You should help them. And he was really getting on my nerves. And I said to him, I'm calling them. I picked up the phone, put him on speakerphone, and I said, kids, I said, your dad thinks I should stick my nose in your business around your wedding invitations. Would you like that? And I said, or should I just wait until you need some advice and you'll call me? They said, no, we're good. We'll call you. So but that's a place where I could have been sticking my nose in, where they didn't need me to tell them how to do their wedding invitation. They were 30 years old. Good God. They could do it. I did it way younger than that. So it's those things. That's the big difference. And that's why it's so important. And it leads us into the next part of this exercise, which is what goes where, to try to figure out where we want to put our energy. So this starts with, and the benefit of doing this is to really get clear on what's your circle of concern and what's in your circle of influence, to identify what you're mostly attached to right now and discern if those things take energy, or if they deplete your energy, or if they give you energy. So the first column is to make a list of 10 or 12, or I've only put 5 spaces in here, things that you have strong attachments to. And it may be strange to include in there certain friends, certain acquaintances. It could be Facebook friends, colleagues, customers, clients, bosses, your pets, your animals, your home, your car, your clothes, your jewelry, your toys. Because then we're going to see what having all of those things do in our life. So I'll give you a moment while I take a drink of water to write some of those down. And just for fun, we're just going to use friends as an example. So you can even write down certain names. I'm thinking of a half a dozen names right now in a conversation I had with a friend a couple of weeks ago. And that leads us into the next column. So do those friends give you energy? Is it a plus or a minus to have them in your life? And where an item makes a positive difference or an addition to your life, like say a friend, you put a plus sign. But next to the ones that make you tired or grumpy, put a minus sign.
Okay.
And if you're not sure if it's a plus or a minus, then think about it. One way to think about it, how would you feel if that item or that friend was no longer in your life? Would you be happier or would you be distressed and upset? So it could be things. It could be your car, your dishes, your clothes. You know, if you forgot your coat someplace and you're particularly attached to that coat, how distressed would you be if it wasn't in your life? But if we think about friends, and we think about friends that we haven't seen or heard of for ages, or you keep sending them messages and you don't get any responses back, and, oh, I'm so busy, I'm busy, I'm busy. You may feel that it's a minus in your life by not having them in your life. But on the other hand, then when you do get together and it's not so much fun, it's not what you expected, there's no interaction, or, sorry, I've got a chill again, and the conversations can go awry. It could be making you tired because people change. We all change. And we've all had friends where we've been really close friends for a little while, and then all of a sudden the relationship is changing a bit. And they're no longer, you're probably no longer giving yourself energy. I remember years ago, John worked for a boss who said, you know, usually whatever you think of someone, they probably think the same as you. I had a friend who was working on Parliament Hill for a minister, and I said, she said, oh, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit. I can't stand him. I can't stand working there. And I said, when are you going to do that? She says, well, we're going to Vancouver, and I've never been to Vancouver, so I'll do it as soon as I get back. And I said, well, if you're thinking of quitting, he's thinking of firing you. And you're guessing it. The very next moment she got in, and the assistant fired her. And it wasn't even him. She didn't even see him. And I said, yeah, they sort of figured you were not engaged enough, and you were no longer serving them, and they were no longer serving you. So although the agreement, it was not said until she lost her job, you can understand how things change. And when we think highly of somebody, they often think highly of us. And when you think they're probably thinking the same of you. I thought that was a pretty interesting lesson.
Mm-hmm. Yes, true, because it does feed on each other, and it's symbiotic. Most relationships are symbiotic, so.
Yeah, you're thinking of somebody you fired. Yeah, and sometimes, I mean, I fired people, and they came back. I remember this one that I fired, and she came back a few months later, and she said, I was so mad at you that day. She said, but it was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because then she started her own company, and the reason why I saw her 3 months later was because I hired her back to work for me on a contract basis at a lot more than what I was paying her. So it worked out really well. So it's nice when you have that space to be able to do that. So that's the first part of it. And then we're going to leave the chart with our plus and minuses and going on to the next part, because we'll come back to that page. And this exercise number 10 is about objects. So what makes you feel really good? Because on that list, you had a list of attachments. I love this shawl. John got it for me at Nordstrom's for Christmas. It's soft and it's fuzzy and it's huge. And he laughs at me because I haven't taken it off since Christmas Eve. I wear it to watch TV. It's long. I can, look, it's like a giant magic ride. And I can put it on my lap. And of course, it's orange and it's fabulous. And then I can just slip it on and off, and the sleeves don't get in the way on my desk when I'm working. So I'm very attached to this, and it makes me feel really good and luxurious and soft. So what things do you have, or it could be people, but anything that makes you feel good, then you want to keep it in your life. And the purpose of this exercise is very often we keep things in our life that can even make us feel bad. They don't make us feel good anymore. They make us feel bad. Then if you can get rid of it, get rid of it. Like that skirt I had in my closet for all those years just because I love the fabric. Finally, I just took it apart and I'm using it as a tablecloth because it's such a beautiful fabric. Christy says, you still have that skirt? I said, yeah, but look, the fabric is so nice. So whatever, you may inherit things. I had a bunch of stuff from my mother-in-law and I gave it away. I gave as much of it away as I could. And I mean, gave it away, threw a whole container full away, and then gave a lot to her neighbors because it wasn't going to do anything for me and I didn't need any more of that doilies in my house. So do you have anything that you pick up and or you put on and you go, oh, that old thing, I don't feel good in that?
I mean, I think it's important just to, you know, if you don't have room, if you will, and I'm not talking necessarily physical room, if you're kind of surrounded with stuff and things that are bad or make you feel bad, then it actually squeezes out the room and possibility for things that are good. It drowns it out. So it's, I think it's important to try and purge stuff, whether it's physical stuff or things that are just negative on a regular basis.
And that's really important to do with kids because they want more, but they have to learn to package it up and get rid of what they've got to make room for the new. You know, to clean out our closet, to purge things out, and to make room, sometimes just to make room for empty space. So that we don't have everything jammed in tight, says she with the packed up bookshelf. I got rid of a lot of books though, but I love books. So is there anything, Pat, is there anything that you can think of that comes to mind that you would want to purge out?
Well, actually, I'm in the middle of a big decluttering period of my life, however, I find it so incredibly boring that I tend to procrastinate on it. So, especially with papers, with objects and clothing, it's not so bad, but all of it I find really very boring. But because I love the results so much of doing it, I try to focus on the payoff. Yeah. And I find every bit of, you know, I'm talking about physical decluttering at this point. I've mostly gotten rid of all the negative people in my life already years ago. But probably in the last 10 years I've done that. But it's physical stuff. And books. I'm a bookaholic. So, but I've been really working on getting rid of a phenomenal number of books as well, and so let someone else enjoy them.
Well, and there's the belief that objects hold the energy of whatever the former owner is or whoever made it. So a book will hold the energy of the writer, the publisher, the book binder, the book designer. So it's like that old story about how many people does it take to make a loaf of bread. It's the same thing with so many objects. You know, how many people does it take? And then I find that when I'm walking through, sometimes a mall will have like an antique market there. And I remember going once and I felt so overwhelmed by the energy that I had to leave. It gave me a migraine because there's a lot of energy attached. You know, dishes. Just imagine those dishes that my mother-in-law had that she bought in probably 1940. All the energy it held from all of the meals, the good words and the bad words that were told around that table. I took the whole lot of them and gave them away. I said, here you go. I don't want any of that. So it's that being able to really discern that energetic in it. And there was just something on TV. There was a body part from a saint that came to Ottawa or Montreal. And I can't remember who it was, because religions will often do that. And they keep the relics as being of significance. And a lot of people were very enthralled and really energized by being able to see that relic. So it all depends. And there's also a theory that's called the law of contagion, which is about that items hold energies, and using a person's clothing, you know, to find someone, or a lock of their hair to cast a spell or to put a curse on them. So we may want to, even if you have something that you love. I had a client who had a beautiful Tiffany necklace, but the guy that gave it to her was not nice to her. He was physically abusive. She didn't want to give up the necklace. So she took it off and ran it underwater, and she just was cleansing the energy from it. And then she found it remarkable that she just let all of those bad feelings go away with it. So if we want to keep something, we can always do that. There are certain things that I'll get, like when I go to a place that has stones, because I love stones, I will always clean my stones once I get them home, because other people are picking them up and I don't want their energies. And I clean them regularly, either by moonlight or in the water, and running water preferably. So that's one of the ways you can change the energy in the items you want to keep. You could also burn smudge or sage and use the smoke to wash them in. And that may change for you the energy that they hold. You can also set a clear intent on the energy you want to receive from an item. A keepsake. You know, I have some keepsakes from a friend of mine who has passed away. And I just feel good having it with me because I have very fond memories of her. So I keep it for that reason, because it gives me that positive energy. So if we go back to that previous chart, you can look at everything on your list and decide if they belong in your circle concern or your circle of influence, and those that you can and want to invest your energy into. So you want to focus more on those ones because they add energy or love or happiness to you. And when you're giving from the heart and you're not sacrificing yourself negatively, then that helps others add to these as well. So that list of items is good to take another look at. Are we complete with this piece? We can move on to the affirmation.
Yeah.
So the affirmation that goes with this is, I focus on my circle of influence and make a positive difference. As opposed to sticking my nose into my circle of concern where it does not belong. So the next exercise is exercise 11. And here we're following the same idea again. It's still about creating your emotional maturity. So it's your environment. And like you just said, Pat, it's having the emotional maturity to be able to release those relationships that no longer serve you. And I'm sure we've all done that. And sometimes we've been released from relationships that no longer serve the person. So when we look at our environment, what are things that we can do to our environment that will make us feel better? Look at this. I got this beautiful bouquet because I had the wisdom circle at my house on Sunday. Look at those red tulips and ostomeria. In fact, the bouquet is double this size. I thought it looked a bit over the top, so I brought it half of it into my office. In the water, good. That one needs a little adjustment. It needs support from its friends. So it's really important for us to create an environment where we feel comfortable, where there's beauty, where there isn't that clutter. And I think that's what you were saying, Pat. That's why you feel so much better after. And even after a person's been visiting you for weeks, and when they leave, your environment just feels cleaner. It feels uncluttered. It feels freer. And maybe you didn't feel like that a month ago before they came, but once they've been and they're gone, and I hope I don't do that, the two of you, Nat and Shinlei, when I come back, sure, I'm so glad she's gone. I won't be staying for 3 weeks, so, and I'm sharing my visit, so it'll be all good. So what are 3 things you could do immediately to change your environment so you gain some energy or some comfort or some vitality?
So during my mom's visit for the past 3 weeks, there were moments of, unpleasantness, to say the least. So actually, after this video conference tonight, I'm not sure, have you seen it? This Chinese has this like lantern. You can light it up and then you set it off, and you can either make a wish of, set an intention, whatever. So I was talking to my friend after yoga today. I'm going to set a sky lantern tonight, and whatever negative feelings and emotions and energies that had happened during my mom's visit, I'm just going to set it off with the lantern up in the sky. Far,
And it
far
just
away.
flies away?
Yes, it just flies away. I have some when you come. We can set a couple of them if you want.
Goody, goody. I'd love that. That would be great. I'd love to do that.
So that's what I'm going to do, to kind of, and that's kind of one way to do it. And we also did that for Chinese New Year. So we make some wishes during the Chinese New Year. On the first day of the New Year, we set a lantern and light up the lantern, set it off to the sky. So there are a couple ways you can use the lantern.
That's great.
Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do today. Immediately.
Well, we're not going to run over time, that's for sure. So, Pat, you're in the midst of cleaning out and decluttering?
Yes, yeah.
So what's the last thing you've done to clean up your environment?
Oh, the worst, my papers. This is like, because I have my own small business, so I didn't realize that I was kind of holding on to some old stuff, like from previous incarnations of my business,
Yeah.
And so by letting it go, it kind of like really lightens me up for what I'm doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like enlightenment. What it really is lighten up, right? So the more I declutter, the lighter I feel, mentally and emotionally and spiritually.
Do you have copies of whatever papers you need electronically?
For some I do. For some I do, some I don't.
Mm-hmm. And we moved a lot of things when we moved to Ottawa 4 years ago, and then we had a flood in the basement. And it wasn't like the flood in Texas. This was a flood from above. John forgot the sink in the laundry room overflowed because it's on the main floor. He was soaking the board for cooking. And I walked in and right away I could hear the water splashing. Oh, it wasn't that much, he says. It all went down. Luckily not in the finished part of the basement. And there was piles of papers in there and all kinds of stuff. And all I could think of was, I paid 50 cents a pound to move this stuff. And now I'm just throwing it all away. 50 cents, $1, $1.50, $2. I'm going, oh, it's not even the stuff. had no value to me anymore. It was what did it cost to move it, all that energy, and still
Yeah,
in the garage waiting to go to the shredder. Like you, it's all my old bookkeeping from when my business started in 2000 and 1999.
yeah. And but it's like when I was younger, I used to move more often, but now I've been older. Where I live now, I've been here for I guess close to 20 something years, you know. And so I find when living in a house longer than like when you're younger, you move more often. So I used to always be great opportunity to throw stuff out.
Yeah.
But somehow when you're in a place longer, we accumulate stuff, and I just want to get rid of stuff. My husband in certain areas, he's a bit of a pack rat in certain things. But I sort of, as you said, you're center of concern and center of influence. So that part, I just let it go. And I notice that the more I do, this inspires him to do it. Whereas if I just told him to do it or asked him to do it, oh no, but when he sees me doing it, suddenly it inspires him and he does it. So I really see that we need to, if we're going to be leaders in our life, it does inspire other people too, even the people closest to us.
Yeah, and Des brings up a really good point because he thinks I just throw out his stuff. And he says, but you never purge your stuff. But I have 2 bags of stuff. But he doesn't see it because I don't leave it in the hall in a laundry basket for 3 months. I just, when I purge it out, I pack it away and it's ready to get out. So I must make a point tomorrow of pulling it out so he sees, and then we'll get rid of it. There's so many little things we could do, even washing windows a little bit or getting someone to wash the windows or fluffing up the pillows, or I'm fond of moving the furniture around or cleansing your energetic space with either Chinese lantern or sponge, just a smudge. Just look around and see, how can I make this better? How can I make this space so that I'm happier in it and I'm happy to walk into the room? I don't want to just turn around, walk back out again.
Yes, I love that Chinese lantern idea. Is that Xinlei? Yeah,
Yes.
I love that. That was such a great idea. I had never heard of that one before.
You can get it on Amazon. Google Chinese sky lantern.
Chinese sky lantern? Okay, I'll look that up. Okay.
So I'm going to Texas, Pat, to go see these 2 lovely ladies in April.
Oh, you're both in Texas.
Yeah.
All
They're both
right.
in Houston.
Wow. Quite different weather there than from where we are, eh, Linda?
Yeah, you're not kidding.
So we just put new floors in most of our house here, and we went from kind of all chopped up and different styles of floors to just everything the same, and it is so much more relaxing and energy boosting. So it's the same, I think the same kind of thing, and again, we had to clear a lot of stuff out so they could actually get the floors down. So that's it's refreshing to have that, and it makes it, as you say, happier and have, as a result, I would say we've probably got more energy, or there's at least a contentness that comes as a result. So.
And it makes the house more your own because you've been there for a few years, but you just bought it.
Exactly. So exactly.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And Pat, Xinlei got flooded out of, part of her house got flooded out. So
we're all good now.
Pardon?
We're all good.
Yeah, it's all fixed up now. It's all beautiful.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah. Okay, let's see what our affirmation is for this. There we go. Who wants to read this one?
My personal effort makes my world a better place.
And the personal effort includes hiring somebody else to do the floors. Just saying, you don't have to do this stuff yourself. Okay, we have 10 minutes left. And the next exercise is talking about limiting fears. but I don't want to leave us on that tone tonight, because we've left with such a lovely tone and a nice environment that we'll pick that up next week when we talk about limiting. I don't want to start something that I can't finish. So we're going to leave you on a positive note next week and move you through the limiting fears and feeling and behaving like a victim. And we're going to turn that around. But I don't want to get started on something and then not have you have the beautiful sleep that you deserve. And you're going to light your lovely lantern. I'm going to go spend time with my husband, since it's been one of those days where we just kept crossing each other. And so that will conclude our webinar for tonight. So thank you so much for attending.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see you later.
Yeah, next Tuesday, same place at 8 Eastern Standard Time. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks, Pat. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye, Shinlei. Bye, Nat.